The plate hit the floor with a heavy thud. Steam rose from the spilled soup, spreading across the greasy tiles like a slow-moving river. It stopped just short of the worn-out shoes of a trembling man, still soaked from the storm outside. Lara didn't hesitate. She stepped in front of him, arms outstretched, as if a thin frame could block the weight of all the disgust aimed his way. The restaurant fell silent so thick, you could almost hear people blinking. Someone coughed. Another stirred their coffee too slowly. No one spoke. She reached into her pocket and said firmly, "Then take it out of my paycheck." But it wasn't. "Enough. You're fired, Lara. Get out now." By that point, Lara should have known kindness comes at a cost. She was 29, wore a coffee-stained apron and permanent shadows under her eyes. She had been working at Red's Grill for nearly 4 years, not because she loved it, but because it was the only place that didn't ask for a degree, just endurance. Endurance to handle double shifts, rude customers, a boss who mistook cruelty for leadership, and a paycheck that never made it to the end of the month. Still, she smiled, served tables like she was quietly stitching the world back together, one gesture at a time. She knew exactly what it felt like to be invisible. Ever since her mother had been hospitalized and her father disappeared, Lara had been holding her world together with taped-up routines, bills paid in parts, and a cat named Misha waiting for her every night on a frayed rug in a tiny apartment. No luxuries, no time for dreams, but she had dignity, and that was what she clung to, even when everything else threatened to fall apart. The diner wasn't glamorous. It sat between a tire shop and a pawn store, with fogged-up windows and vinyl booths that creaked under weight. Still, it was a pit stop for truckers, retirees, and overworked city clerks. People came for slow meals, small complaints, and the comfort of routine. Lara knew every regular by name. She knew Mr. Afonso liked his coffee black. Donna Marta always skipped the onions, and Officer Joel only came in on Tuesdays with red eyes from another sleepless night. That rainy afternoon, the man walked in slowly. His coat was soaked through, clinging to him like a second skin. The smell of mildew, rain, and hardship followed his every step. Customers wrinkled their noses. The manager looked disgusted, but Lara saw something else. The way he clutched a crumpled envelope to his chest, the dignity in his downcast eyes, the cautious stillness of someone trying not to take up space. "Just a cup of hot water, miss," he whispered. "And maybe, if there's old bread, ... She didn't ask questions. She reheated a plate, left untouched by a customer, added a warm slice of bread, poured fresh coffee, and set it all on a clean tray. When she placed it in front of him, the man hesitated. "I can't pay," he murmured. Lara just smiled. "It's already paid." That was when the manager appeared, his flaring voice rising, and the entire diner turned into a quiet theater of judgment. No one stood up. No one said thank you. No one met her gaze. Only the old man, who chewed slowly, like he was trying to memorize what warmth felt like when she was thrown out under curses and commands. Lara didn't cry. The world had taken worse from her, but walking into the rain, jobless, rent due, shoes soaked and pride tucked in the corner of her pocket, she felt something strange in her chest, a quiet certainty. Even if no one saw it, even if no one cared, she had done the right thing. And sometimes that had to be enough. What she didn't know was that someone had seen. The next morning, at exactly 6:43 a.m., Lara was still asleep when the first silhouette appeared on the sidewalk outside Red's Grill. Within minutes, he wasn't alone. 100, then 200 uniformed men and women began lining up in front of the diner, backs straight, eyes forward, silent. They weren't there for coffee. They weren't there for business. They were there for her. ***. Lara woke up to the sound of her phone vibrating non-stop. At first, she thought it was her alarm, but when she reached for it, the screen was lit up with notifications, missed calls, messages, and links. Confused, she rubbed her eyes and opened one of them. It was a video, grainy, shaky, showing her standing in the diner, facing her boss as he yelled. In the background, the camera had caught the old man, spooning soup into his mouth like it was sacred. The caption read, "She was fired for feeding a veteran." Lara's stomach dropped. The clip had spread fast. People online were furious. Some called her a hero, others demanded justice. But with every message of support came another of suspicion. Trolls accused her of faking the whole thing, Former co-workers stayed silent or were shared posts, saying she always wanted attention. One even messaged her privately, "Hope the internet feeds your cat, because no one else will." Lara turned off the phone. Her hands were shaking, her thoughts scrambled. She hadn't asked for this. At 8:12 a.m., there was a knock at the garage door below her apartment. She hesitated. Through the window, she saw a reporter camera crew. "Already filming, they're asking for you," the woman said breathlessly. "The soldiers, they're outside Red's Grill. It's the whole street. You need to come." Lara blinked. "What soldiers?" she whispered. "What are you talking about?" But the reporter had already turned back to the car. Lara grabbed a hoodie, slipped on her wet shoes from the day before, and ran. When she reached the street corner, she froze. It wasn't just one or two. It was a sea of uniforms. Soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, their boots soaking in shallow puddles, backs straight as if on parade. Some held flags. Others stood at ease, but all of them were facing the diner, silent, still waiting. A few townspeople had gathered, at a distance, phones out, mouths hanging open. Lara's breath caught in her throat. A single soldier stepped forward, broad-shouldered, grey at the temples, medals shining beneath his overcoat. He removed his hat and looked straight at her. "Miss Lara Brooks." She nodded, unsure if her voice would even work. "My name is Colonel James Everett. We're here because of what you did. You didn't just serve a meal. You honored a man we thought we'd lost." He stepped aside. Behind him, a younger soldier held a framed photograph. It was the same man from the diner, clean-shaven, standing, tall in a worn uniform, surrounded by his unit. Lara's eyes filled with tears. She covered her mouth with one hand. Colonel Everett continued, "That man is Sergeant Daniel Reed. He saved the lives of 6 of my men in Afghanistan, took shrapnel in his leg, refused evacuation until everyone else was safe. After returning, he disappeared. We searched for him for years. No one knew where he went until yesterday, when your kindness brought him back into the light." The silence broke as dozens of soldiers lifted their hands in a solemn salute. The entire street seemed to pause. Lara stood still, the weight of the moment pressing into her chest. She'd never met Sergeant Reed before that rainy night. She had no idea of his story. All she'd seen was a man who looked tired and hungry. But now, surrounded by this living wall of gratitude, she began to understand sometimes the smallest actions echo the loudest. The colonel handed her a small wooden box. Inside was a polished medal and a folded American flag. "He wanted you to have this," he said softly. For reminding him he still mattered. Lara couldn't speak. She looked down at the medal, then back at the soldiers. One of them stepped forward, tears in his eyes. "He saved me 12 years ago, and yesterday... You saved him." Cameras flashed. Reporters spoke into microphones, but Lara didn't notice. Her world had narrowed to the warmth in her hands. The sudden feeling that maybe she wasn't invisible anymore. The girl who had been fired for compassion now stood in front of 200 soldiers, each one reminding her that honor doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it wears an apron, soaked in rain, and serves a plate of food with nothing to gain. They fired her for helping a homeless man. The next morning, 200 soldiers were waiting by nightfall. The video of the salute had reached over 1 million views. Hashtags like #HonorForLara and #JusticeForReed trended on every platform. News stations across the country replayed the footage of soldiers standing in silence outside Red's Grill. But while the internet caught fire, the diner went cold. Red's owner, Roger Tillman, tried to make a statement on live TV, but he was drowned out by chants from veterans groups who had gathered outside his door. The next morning, the restaurant was shuttered. Its windows were covered in brown paper, and a sign in the window read, "Permanently closed." Lara didn't gloat. She didn't post a video. She didn't even respond to the thousands of messages in her inbox. Instead, she sat on the floor of her small apartment, Misha curled on her lap, holding the folded flag in one hand and the medal in the other. She had no job, no savings, and no plan, but she had peace, a kind of quiet strength that no paycheck could ever give. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. 2 days later, she received a call from an unfamiliar number. "Miss Brooks," the voice said, "I represent a veteran-led non-profit. We'd like to offer you a position managing our new community kitchen in Ridgefield. We believe someone like you, someone who acts without applause, is exactly who we need." Lara's throat tightened. She nodded, even though no one could see it. I accept. The kitchen was housed in an old warehouse on the east side of town, once a vending machine repair center, now gutted and painted with murals of unity, service, and hope. On the first day, Lara arrived early with a tote bag of second-hand spices and her lucky apron. She opened the doors to find 4 soldiers already waiting outside, boxes of donated food in their arms. "Ready when you are, ma'am," one of them said. The days that followed were nothing short of miraculous. People came with casseroles and hands ready to scrub pots. Local farmers dropped off crates of vegetables. Retired nurses signed up for weekend shifts. Even the mayor showed up quietly one afternoon to shake Lara's hand. "This town forgot what community meant," he admitted. "You reminded us." Sergeant Daniel Reed visited the kitchen 2 weeks after the salute. He was cleaner now, steadier, walking with a cane but holding his head high. When he saw Lara, he didn't speak right away. He just hugged her, tight, long, grateful. She felt him tremble, and for the first time, she let herself cry, not because of pain, but because of healing. He returned often after that, not just to eat, but to help. He taught young volunteers how to hold a ladle properly, told stories about serving overseas, and sat quietly with those who had nothing but time and wounds. "You gave me a second chance," he told Lara one night while drying dishes. "So now, I'm giving it forward." The kitchen became more than a charity, it became a heartbeat. Veterans worked beside teenagers, single mothers beside retired mechanics, and Lara, she didn't wear a title. She just showed up, every day, with coffee, with a smile, with that same quiet fire her mother used to call her stubborn hope. One evening, as she was locking up, she found a small envelope taped to the door. Inside was a single sheet of paper, no name, no number, just a sentence, written in careful block letters. "Your kindness started a revolution." Months passed. The story faded from headlines, replaced by newer controversies, louder outrage. But in Ridgefield, it had changed everything. The building that once housed Red's Grill remained vacant, its windows dust-covered and silent. No one had dared rent it, not out of fear but out of respect, as if the silence there had become sacred. Across town, the Ridgefield community kitchen buzzed with life. Its windows glowed warm into the night. The air smelled of cinnamon bread and simmering stew. Laughter echoed off the walls. On the front door, painted in bold letters, was a phrase chosen by the volunteers: "Leave no soul forgotten." Lara never claimed credit. She never gave interviews, but she did receive letters, hundreds of them, from veterans she'd never met, from waitresses in small towns, from strangers who wrote things like, "You reminded me that doing good matters," or "I was going to give up. Then I saw what you did." Even Misha became a local celebrity. Kids would bring treats and draw pictures of the kitchen cat. She sat in the same window every morning, watching the world go by like a tired queen with stories to tell. And Daniel Reed, he found housing through the non-profit, started working part-time as a mentor for at-risk youth. On Veterans Day, he stood beside Lara as the mayor unveiled a plaque in front of the kitchen with both their names engraved. Lara whispered to him, "It still doesn't feel real." He smiled. "That's because real things don't scream, they just stand." One afternoon, a boy no older than 8 walked in with a single cookie wrapped in plastic and a dollar bill clutched in his hand. "I saw the video," he said. "My grandpa was a soldier too. I want to help someone like you did." Lara knelt down and took the cookie like it was made of gold. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. She just nodded, hand over her heart, just like the soldiers had done that morning outside the diner. At home, in a simple wooden box beside her bed, Lara kept 3 things: a folded flag, a worn medal, and a note from a stranger. Some nights, she'd open it, run her fingers across the words, and whisper the sentence that had changed her life. You reminded him he still mattered. She had once been fired for giving someone a meal. Now she fed a city, not because it made headlines, but because it was right. And in a world that often forgets the quiet heroes, Lara Brooks became one without ever asking to be.